Well, ladies and gentlemen, so here we are in my backyard. This is actually our pool here, and that's the workout facility right there where I pump these skinny little muscles. So, yeah. So, as I said, today we are going to be talking about, or not as I said, as the video says, phenomena of Jupiter and Saturn transit. And why is it? It is one of the most important transits in astrology. Doesn't matter if it's pagan astrology, Western astrology, Vedic astrology, Paleo astrology, any astrology. Saturn and Jupiter are the biggest, sayers in what happens in our life, because these are the two biggest planets in the solar system besides the sun. I mean, these are not planets, but in astrology, everything is considered planets. So, but these guys are the judges. Jupiter is the one who lays down the law for all the humans, and Saturn is the one who implements the law and says, okay, I'm going to judge you now based on the laws of nature that we have given you. So in a person's life, whenever anybody has any major achievement, whether it's promotion, getting a rise in career, sudden rise in career, marriage, children, home, academic achievements, sports achievements, spiritual achievements, all of it is decided by the transit of Jupiter and Saturn. It's only when Jupiter and Saturn are at the right place, at the right time, when they aspect a certain house or placed in a certain house by their transit, their early transit, that's when they trigger things. Whether good or for bad, that all depends, which we'll discuss. But Jupiter and Saturn transit is the sayer on everything. Like if you are going to have children, Jupiter and Saturn must be either aspecting the fifth house or placed in the fifth house by transits. And what do I mean by transits? It's the yearly movements of the planets. Like right now, certain planet is moving in the certain sky, in the sky. But in your birth chart, your Saturn might be in the fourth house, okay, in the sign of Libra, exalted. But in transit, it might be in Aries. In transit, it might be in Taurus. Like currently, it's in Libra, okay. So whenever we look at transit, it's the yearly movement. So don't mistake that with your planetary placements. So as I said, if you're looking to get a birth of a child, and through Vimshotri Mahadashas and all of this, if you want to know like Mahadashas and planetary placements and transit, for that, check out the links here so you can get your full astrological report and my books, Astrology Conjunction and Aspects at the Speed of Light. So here, all of it will make sense if it doesn't right now. But anytime, if somebody's looking for a child, when the timing of child will happen, first you have to see the Mahadashas. And I have made plenty of videos with Vaughn Paul Manley on timing of birth of children. So fifth house is seen, and the Vimshotri Mahadasha, the planetary time period that an individual goes through, the Mahadasha should be running of a planet who's running the fifth house, placed in the fifth house, or placed in the ascendant in the Saptamsha chart, which is a divisional chart, or the planet or planetary Mahadasha of the planet that controls the fifth house in D7 chart, Saptamsha chart. So that tells you the timing of the children. Okay, in this 7-year period or 19-year period, you will have a child, okay? Now then you narrow it down to the actual Antradasha. Okay, what is the Antradasha? Which planet is looking at the fifth house? Which planet is placed in the fifth house? Which planet is really signifying child by its placement and aspect? So then you narrow it down to your Antradasha. Now to really see, even from Priyantradasha, if that event will take place or not, if the child will safely come, if the child will safely be delivered and not have any problems, Saturn and Jupiter should be looking at the fifth house, sitting in the fifth house by their early transit, yet in a good way. So let's say if Saturn is exalted in Libra right now, and your fifth house is controlled by Libra, and Saturn is sitting there, that means that's one good positive point. Then you have Jupiter currently transiting the sign of Gemini. That means if Gemini is the ascendant and Saturn is in the fifth house in Libra, and Jupiter is right there, he's looking at the 5th house. So what is happening? These two planets are triggering birth of a child for somebody who has a Gemini ascendant in this life, in this time period right now. And transits are seen from the ascendant and from the moon. So from the moon, if your moon chart in Vedic astrology, again, it's very simple to know. You just have to check out the links here. But moon chart, if a planet is transiting 5th from the moon or 5th from the ascendant, it's the same thing. So if Jupiter and Saturn are either transiting in the 5th house or aspect the 5th house, like Jupiter is doing, that triggers an event regarding the 5th house. That could be educational achievements at the same time, birth of a child at the same time, okay? But now you want to confirm that in a divisional chart as well. So in the D7 chart, the Saptamsha chart, you again want to see where is Saturn transiting and where is Jupiter transiting. If they're transiting in the exact same place, that tells you, that confirms a birth of a child will happen in the next 2 years, and it'll happen safely, okay? Same thing with the jobs. Let's say if Saturn is transiting or Saturn is aspecting the 10th house, let's say it's in Libra and it aspects the 10th house, and then Jupiter, okay, is in the 2nd house and it aspects the 10th house, or Jupiter is sitting in the 10th house. What it does, it activates the notion of rise in career. So as I say, so if let's say somebody's career is not happening and they're 25, 26, or they're in a middle age like 40, 45, and they haven't seen a boost in career for quite some time. Well, let's say right now in transit, if they have a Capricorn ascendant, that means Saturn is transiting the 10th house, okay? That means Saturn being transiting and being exalted in the 10th house will now trigger their 10th house, their 10th house career. But this actual trigger will also take place because of the fact Jupiter is aspecting from the 6th house to the 10th house in its transit, because Jupiter is in the sign of Gemini. And because Jupiter is in the sign of Gemini, it looks at the 10th house from its 5th aspect. So Saturn is in the 10th house, he's triggering the career, then Jupiter boosts it and blesses it. See, Jupiter blesses it. His aspect and placement is a blessing, where Saturn is a trigger. Saturn will turn it off or turn it on. So right now it shows a boost in career of somebody's life, especially if it hits their maximum exaltation point. However, as I even said before, if you have a certain planet placed there, okay, let's say you have a Sun placed there, you have a Ketu placed there, then that will trigger a different thing. That will trigger a different result for you. And this is why this is probably a first part to a transit video. You gotta know, what does it mean when Saturn is transiting over your Ketu, over Rahu, over Sun, over Moon? That will also show you, well, but we don't have time for that. However, I just want to make a video on telling you that when you judge something, let's say you're judging something through Vimshotri Mahadasha or Charadasha even, you need to see where Jupiter and Saturn are. When are they promising this event? Just from their own transit, it can literally give you 80% of accuracy. Then you look at other things like other planetary transit to really promise it and bring it about on the actual day. But you know, even in, let's say somebody buying a house. Let's say the time period the Mahadasha says you may be able to buy a house. But that actual event may not happen until Jupiter and Saturn a transit promises that. So let's say in Cancer ascendant, Saturn is in the 4th house. Saturn is exalted. It is promising something related to the 4th house. It is trying to turn it on and off, okay? But then Jupiter is in Gemini looking at the 4th house. And so what it does, Jupiter blesses Saturn. Hey, let's give him, or let's give this person, give him or her a house. Let's give him or her their own property, their own peace of mind, their own happiness. So this is how this transit happens. Same thing with marriage. Let's say if Saturn is transiting your 7th house, okay? And currently, If Jupiter is in the sign of Gemini and Saturn is transiting your 7th house of Libra, that again is triggering a marriage for somebody who's an Aries ascendant, either from an ascendant point or from moon chart. If this is happening, it's triggering your marriage. Now, to confirm this, you're gonna look at this same transit in Nimansha chart to see where is it happening. Is it happening exactly in the 3rd and 7th axis? Is it happening in the 5th and 4th or 4th and 2nd axis? Because all of these houses also represent family and initiation of family. But mainly, you will confirm that in the birth chart. You will look at it in the divisional chart. If it's happening in the divisional chart too, you just know this person will get married. Now, you can't say that if somebody's 10 years old or 15 years old. We're not living in those times again, so you got to look at the time too. If their age is not there, age appropriate for marriage, it's not going to happen. But what could happen is they may find a boyfriend. They may find a girlfriend in this time. Those things happen too. Relationships will happen for people. So if it's not age appropriate, or let's say Mahadasha is not there for you to get married, yet this transit happens. What this happens triggers, it triggers business partnership and relationships and meeting other people. So everything that you see in your life is being blessed by Jupiter or Saturn. Let's say somebody wants their spiritual enlightenment. Saturn is currently transiting their 12th house in Libra. That means they're Scorpio ascendant. Jupiter is in the 8th house, transiting in the sign of Gemini. 8th house is transformation, 12th house is spirituality. This person is going to suddenly find transformation in spirituality, but traveling to foreign lands. Something will happen. They will travel to foreign lands. Maybe somebody in America travels to India, suddenly finds a guru, falls in love with Krishna and Vedic astrology and the Vedas, and finds this transformative life of spirituality in their life. Everything is happening only because of Saturn and Jupiter. And when it doesn't happen, is because they're probably not promising it. Both of them are not at the exact triggering point to do things. This is why Jupiter and Saturn transit are so important. So in the same way, when Saturn and Jupiter, give you things, they also take away things. They also restrict you in gaining things, and that again occurs in transit. That again occurs in transit on the sign that they're placed in. So let's say if Saturn is placed in Aries, that means it's debilitated, okay? And it's transiting your 10th house. That means 10th house is a house of your reputation or your career and how your ups and downs in career is going to happen. So if Saturn is transiting there, he's going to bring trouble because that's where Saturn is debilitated. Now let's say Jupiter in transiting is sitting in the 6th house. What is Jupiter going to do? Well, remember, there's this thing. When Saturn takes, Jupiter protects. And it's one of the quotes of Kapiel Raaj. That when Jupiter is in the 6th house, he's going to try to protect. See, Jupiter does not want to do harm to anyone, no matter where it's transiting. But when Saturn is doing something bad, it's going to try to protect it. It's going to try to not give you such a hard time. So instead of, let's say, you getting laid off or fired from a job, you might get demoted. That's because Jupiter was, blessing the 10th house, yet Saturn turned his bad switch on. So he's like, look, I have to do my job, transiting in the 10th place. But because Jupiter was there, he just said, I will still protect it. I will still give you, less of a hard time. But let's say if Jupiter was in the 7th house, for the same person, Cancer ascendant, Jupiter is transiting the 7th house. That means Jupiter is debilitated. Saturn is transiting the 10th house of Aries. What do you think is going to happen? Now, Jupiter cannot protect, Jupiter cannot bless, Jupiter can't do anything because Jupiter is not looking there and Jupiter is at its weakest point. So this person will have loss of career, loss of reputation. This person will be very demotivated to do anything, And so this is where now Jupiter and Saturn transit again, comes into play in a negative way. And that deals with everything. Delay in children, delay in marriage, delay in education. Everything happens due to the transit of Saturn and Jupiter. So just as they're blessing it, they're also, not cursing it, but I would say they're making things more slow and hard for you. But Jupiter will never try to do harm. Jupiter will either protect or bless. So if Jupiter aspects a debilitated Saturn or troubled Saturn, he will always try to nullify that effect. So let's say you get into an accident, but you did not die, you just got a scratch and, a little bit of, broken bone or something. Jupiter was there probably blessing your Saturn. If it wasn't there, yeah, you might be in some other dimension, but that's how important these two planetary phenomena are. And again, where did this information came from? The master himself, Kapiel Raaj. So, if you're in India, I always recommend going to his school, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. That's where you're going to learn all these, tiny bits of information that have the most profound impact. And again, thank you to Vaughn Paul Manley for introducing me to, Kapiel Raaj's books and all his information and his people. And, this has been a blessing. So guys, this was my video on Jupiter and Saturn transits phenomena and how important they are. So again, if you're new to my channel, subscribe below for this cool information. And if you want to know where your planets are placed and which house Saturn and Jupiter are transiting in, for that, check out the links here and check out my books and my astrological report and numerological report on this link. Otherwise, we'll see you with some cool new video tomorrow. And the 6th Lord through houses will start from next week. Sayonara.